Joining us now, Sean Noble with American Encore. Sean, welcome to NRA News Cam and Company. How are you, sir?
Great to be with you guys. Thanks very much.
Thanks for joining us. And tell us, what's your group all about? What are you guys doing?
Well, American Encore is, the vision is to help people understand we need to make America great again. I mean, one of the things that I feel like there's been a loss of over the last number of years is this sense of American exceptionalism. And, you know, a lot of people will say, well, Barack Obama got elected and everyone thinks the country's gone to hell. That's true. I think but part of the reason that this spooks me a little bit is that I think the reason that Barack Obama got elected was because there was a waning lack of sense of American exceptionalism. He is the result of that waning lack of exceptionalism that Reagan warned us about in his final address from the Oval Office in 1989. He said, look, we had a surge of patriotism, but I worry that we're going to lose that it's going to drift away, that we're not going to understand what freedom is. And you guys know more than anybody the importance of the freedoms that we've been blessed by God with. And so the idea for American Encore is to say our best days can be ahead of us if we can help educate the American people and let them realize, yes, this is the greatest nation on earth.
Sean, you talk about the concept of American exceptionalism, and it's almost, I don't know when it happened, but it's almost become a dirty word, especially when you look at in academia and in intelligentsia. I mean, the concept that there is an American exceptionalism seems to be, you're saying a four-letter word these days. Mm-hmm. How dare you be so xenophobic, and how dare you proclaim the exceptionalism of America? They're just a bunch of colonialists or blah, 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 whatever argument that people want to use against the American exceptionalism itself. When people come back at you with something like that, what do you recommend listeners and our viewers say in ways to defend the fact that, yes, this is an exceptional nation with all its faults and all its problems? I just spent a week in England. Beautiful place. Really damn glad to be back. I mean, it's just this is the greatest country in the world. After
Sean gives his answer, I have a comment on that.
All right, so go ahead.
Okay, so the best way I think to describe it is to say name a country in which people will literally risk their lives to try to get to. I mean, as much as we worry about what's going on in the United States, we remain the shining city on a hill, and it's because of it's because of the things that we believe in. It's the things that we're instilled with, and it makes us great. And we need to be great. I mean, one of the things is that there are no other constitutions in the world. I mean, we led 200 plus years ago, understanding that we were bestowed by God these rights, and that the government was there to protect the rights, not to give us rights and say what we can have and can't have. And I think that you're right. It's the mainstream media, it's the academia. They do try to make this seem like it's a bad thing, and we have to push back on that. I mean, there's just no doubt that the first time I kind of realized this was in 2000. I was doing a speech to a high school government class. I was working for Congressman John Shattuck at the time as his chief of staff, kind of standing in for him. And I started my speech by saying, who here believes that the United States is the greatest nation on earth? Now, to me, that's a pretty easy question. Less than half the hands went up. Wow. And I thought to myself, oh, my gosh. I mean, it scared me to death. That was 11 years after Reagan gave us the warning.
And this is just what we were talking about with regards to the newsroom show. It's to say, it's something that we – and it's funny, Sean, because I go a step further with this, which is to say when I talk about this, because I talk about this quite a bit, it is, when you look around – you migrate to England, you migrate to France, you migrate to China, you migrate to Spain. No matter how much time you spend in these nations, no matter how much you become an English citizen, you will never be considered English. You will never be considered French. You will never be considered Chinese, etc. But anybody from anywhere around the world can come to America, can migrate here, can become a citizen, and will be an American, barring nothing else.
Right.
That's it. And that is, to me, what makes us the single most exceptional nation on the face of the earth.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
All right, so Sean, we found you because you're targeting Senator Al Franken, who obviously does need to go. Why Senator Franken? Why has he drawn your interest, and why are you working so hard to get rid of the Democratic incumbent?
Well, one of the things that, the purpose for us in doing this ad that we did up against Senator Franken. We're pointing out that he was one of a handful of senators who wrote letters to the IRS in 2012, urging them to crack down on 501c4s and the speech that they were engaged in, and I took great offense to that because American Encore is a 501c4, and I kind of thought to myself, look, this is Al Franken. This is the guy who should know better than anybody else, being a former entertainer, a comedian on SNL, Saturday Night Live, and other places. He should know better than anybody else the importance of the First Amendment and free speech,
sure.
And yet he's trying to characterize speech done by people he doesn't like as something that shouldn't happen. Well, that's not very American, right? And so our point is, look, Al Franken, the First Amendment is not just for certain classes of society; it's for everybody.
It's funny because you and I share a friend in Phil Kerpen, and Phil's talked about this. He and I worked a great deal on this recently concluded IRS rulemaking. I'm sure you know, because your American Encore is getting pushed back that what they're talking about is not really free speech. But talk about what the NAACP said in their comments to the IRS on this 501c4 rulemaking.
Well, the NAACP, and this is a pretty remarkable thing, and they essentially said, had these rules been in place, there would have not been a civil rights movement. There wouldn't have been this ability for full rights for African Americans. I mean, it is a pretty stark comment coming from the NAACP, and for a liberal like Al Franken, I mean, it's a part of what we're tweaking him a little bit. We're citing the NAACP, ACLU in the ad against him because, look, this guy needs to understand that this has real consequences in stifling speech.
Absolutely, and I'm glad you guys brought up that NAACP comment in your ad.
Sean, before we let you go, you're talking about your issues with Senator Franken and free speech. Something we discussed yesterday that we have an issue with is this media shield law, and the fact that the people who are potentially, we'll talk about the idea of quote-unquote covered journalists not being bloggers, not being tweeters or micro-bloggers as they call them, not being covered under this proposed media shield law, which Chuck Schumer says he'll have his 60 votes to get through. You talk about American exceptionalism and protections of our freedoms. Of course, we are very protective of our Second Amendment here on NRA News, but the First Amendment is right up there too. And when you're talking about the government saying who's a quote-unquote covered journalist, and it not being the new media, who mostly these days are the journalists and are the newsbreakers and are the storytellers, that frightens me, and I don't know why more people who could be affected by this aren't, shouting from the highest mountaintop against this.
Well, that's a great point. It's not just the people affected by it, because at the end of the day, more than half America will be affected. All of America will be affected by it. But we know that more than half the American people get their prime source of news is something online. It's internet, it's email, it's whatever. It's not necessarily broadcast TV. It's not the newspaper. Heaven knows it's not the newspaper.
Right.
So yeah, I think that this is just yet another example of the left trying to protect what they have and squelch anything that will push back on them. I mean, they know that they can't win when it's just the argument. That's part of the reason that people who are like Al Franken would say, well, people deserve to know who's behind these ads and who are the contributors. That the point is that they can't win the argument on its face, so they have to change the subject and have it be who's doing the speaking, not what the speech is. And so as long as we can continue to have the argument about what the issues are, the substantive issues, we'll win those, which is why they're trying to take that ability away from us.
Amen.
All right, well, where do people find you online, Sean?
AmericanEncore.com. And we've got a couple other ads that are out there. We'll have some other activity coming over the next few months. We're looking forward to engaging, front on in defending the First Amendment and really defending all the freedoms. The Second Amendment is right there, and being a rural Arizona gun nut myself, part of my passion for the First Amendment is because I don't want to have to use my rights in the Second Amendment to defend the First Amendment.
Fair enough.
All right. Thank you, sir. Thanks for being with us. Keep up the good work.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Sean Noble, American Encore.